Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much for allowing me to come speak with you today. And thank you, Julie, for the kind presentation. Yes, the topic of the talk has changed a little bit, but the concepts are the same. I am a physician by training, and I've had the luxury and the privilege to be able to work in artificial intelligence now for the greater part of a decade and the vast majority of my career. So getting right into it, artificial intelligence, this concept's been around for quite a while. I mean, we can go back to the first computational algorithms by Ada Lovelace, daughter of Lord Byron, and some of her computational machines. Then we know about Alan Turing and his machines. And it really, in the last about decade, that's when artificial intelligence really picked up, as we know, primarily because we have the overabundance of data and the opportunity to be able to use that data with computational power. So all these kind of algorithms go into what the umbrella that we call artificial intelligence. But I like to view it the other way. This kind of gives us a view of what AI can actually touch. It's kind of the tendrils or the fingers of what it can touch. And we see this in our everyday lives, right? We see it in what we do with the Internet of Things, with our digital assistants. We see it on our phones, the way we watch movies and TV. So we know it can touch vision, robotics, speech, and the list goes on and on. And in healthcare particularly, now we're seeing how much AI is starting to influence startups. I mean, you're here in Silicon Valley, there's millions and millions and millions of dollars being spent on new AI startups that are occurring all the time. It's not just here, it's also everywhere in the world. It's because people see the opportunity that AI has to really move the needle in healthcare particularly. And the way it's moving it, it's really transitioning from this old archaic or draconian method of point-of-care medicine that was very paternalistic, where if all of us here were sick with the same illness, we'd all go to different hospitals, but we would all be treated in the same way. We'd all get the same diagnostics, and we would all get the same treatment if we had the same disease. Artificial intelligence is really moving us away from that point-of-care medicine, that paternalistic medicine, that kind of old mentality, really moving us into this P6 model moving forward, where things are really becoming predictive and prescriptive. So it's not just point-of-care when you get sick, but really evaluating and predicting how you're going to develop disease, what kind of diseases you're going to develop, based on a panomic view of a person. The panomics is the concept of everything, the proteomics, the phenomics, the genomics, the microbiome, everything that goes into you. It's not just a one-size-fits-all medicine anymore. Artificial intelligence really moves the needle forward, that it's really about my illness or your illness. It's not just about one-size-fits-all. So it's becoming very personalized, very participatory in the fact that it's not just the doctor tells you what to do, but now we can actually be incorporated into that decision-making. Public, we have the opportunity now with artificial intelligence to move the needle forward in ways that we never have before. Physicians as a whole, it's kind of a unique industry in the fact that you go into this industry wanting to eliminate the industry. You're really trying to eliminate disease. AI has the opportunity to really do that in ways that we've never had before. Not just one-offs with vaccines, but really moving the needle from diseases that affect us as a whole. And then the psychocognitive of the fact that we're transitioning through AI, not focusing on disease, but really focusing on wellness. And you can see it in so many aspects within our industry already. You can see how AI affects the pharmaceutical industry. You look at Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, GSK. All these companies are leveraging artificial intelligence to start creating medicines that are personalized for you and for me. So it's not the one-size-fits-all. So now if we develop cancer, we can have drugs that are based specifically for our physiology, specifically for the genomics of us and for the genomics of our malignancy. So it can really move the needle, not just how we're treated, but also in healthcare costs, because they're spending millions upon millions of dollars to create these pharmaceuticals that sometimes don't pan out. So using and leveraging AI with micro-avatars to be able to create drugs that will specifically affect everyone, hopefully not have the side effects that we typically have, and maybe even some positive side effects, like I develop cancer, maybe I can grow my hair back. But you can also see it with some of the things that we do when it comes to automation of robotics and surgery. So leveraging AI to actually create automated surgical units, surgical pods that won't cause errors, that will do the surgery based on your particular anatomy, not just a general atlas of anatomy that maybe was created on some sort of Western anatomy file. And the fact that it will transition also me as a clinician. It's not going to be just one specialty anymore. The way our specialties are right now, I'm a radiologist, there's pathologists, there's internists, there's pediatricians. Physicians in the future are going to be augmented with artificial intelligence, and the fact that we're going to be able to do more than we typically do now. We used to laugh, at least in healthcare circles, at shows like House. I don't know if you guys ever watched House, where it's kind of crazy that one guy could do everything, right? He was the ED doc, and he was the molecular doc, and he was the surgeon, and he followed you till end of life. Well, realistically, with artificial intelligence, that's kind of where we're moving. We're going to have this amalgamation of specialties where you have these physicians that aren't so subspecialized, but they're augmented by the AI to be able to do more than they currently are doing. And the same thing we see with our wearables or with our smartphones. AI at our fingertips, AI that's treating us at the point of every day and not just one day when we go see the clinician. And really one of the biggest things when it comes from a public health perspective is the democratization of healthcare. The creation of artificial intelligence algorithms that can treat people the same way regardless of where they are. So you don't have to worry if you're in a rural area in Nepal or if you're traveling overseas. You don't have to worry if you get sick or you get injured that you're not going to get the same level of care as if you were injured or sick at man's greatest hospital in a top-tier academic institution. Regardless of geopolitical status or regardless of socioeconomic status, AI can really move the needle to democratize medicine for all. And you're seeing it because of the digitization of all healthcare and the integration of all that data, whether it's telemedicine, whether it's remote monitoring, whether it's EHR, personal apps, and whatnot. All these are coming together and really giving us a panoramic view of who we are and what our wellness is. And you're going to see the needle moving in cost, too. Currently, we spend so much. You have that exponential curve of healthcare costs, where 90% of our costs are in 10% of people. End of life, cancer, chronic disease, end-stage diseases. That's where most of the healthcare dollars are spent right now, not just in this country, but in many countries. AI will start moving that needle back to the beginning. So we're not focusing on end-of-life issues as much anymore. We're not focusing on disease, but we're actually focusing on perpetuating wellness and perpetuating the state that we are all in from the day we were born. There's that old adage that some people say is Bernard Shaw, that youth is wasted on the young. Well, AI will be able to make that adage just a sweet little anecdote in history because we'll be able to perpetuate wellness of youth ad nauseum. And the cost, again, it's not just us. Yes, ours is looking to balloon to 25% of GDP, but a lot of developing countries and underdeveloped countries are struggling with healthcare costs. You look at Asian countries with the aging population, the rising middle class, even the continent of Africa, where it used to be AIDS or other kind of communicable diseases that caused a lot of healthcare costs. Now it's actually end-of-life cancer, chronic diseases that are rising costs in Africa. And we're already seeing these applications. We're already seeing this transition slowly. This is one from DeepMind in which the workflow is personalized for when someone comes in with chronic kidney disease, so that instead of the old paradigm where it had to go through a bunch of bureaucracy and different levels of healthcare, it actually gets sped up, and you get to the physician, and you go through a health and wellness app, so you get better care, more efficient care, which reduces costs and improves efficiency for our patients. You can see the democratization and the reduced costs in medical imaging. There's a company called Zebra Medical that's having $1 scans. They partner with Google, and it's cloud-based, and they give you a second opinion with their machine learning algorithm on something that's usually costs several hundreds or even thousands of dollars. You can see it in genomics, and there's many companies doing this. Foundation Medicine, Flatiron, GSK, Johnson & Johnson, Google, really creating that personalized wellness and personalized healthcare, looking at the genomics, not just of your own DNA, but of your microbiome, of your epigenetics, of your environment, and the implications that that has on your wellness. You're seeing it already in pre-surgical planning. This is one from DeepMind that hasn't come out yet, but they're working on pre-surgical planning for radiation treatments. So radiation treatments can be complex. If anyone's had the unfortunate event of seeing this happen, it usually could take several hours. It's very uncomfortable. You have to go into a complex CT or MRI, and you evaluate where the cancer is, because where the radiation is going to be, you have to make sure you avoid any sort of inflammation of surrounding good tissue. So this typically takes several hours. There's algorithms that are being developed now to move that from several hours to several minutes. So moving the needle forward. And I could have put hundreds of different applications when it comes to personal wellness device, whether it's a Fitbit or whether it's a handheld device where you have AI already at your fingertips, so you have this constant participatory and constant monitoring of your health and well-being, whether you're awake or whether you're asleep. And nation states are starting to realize the importance of this. They're starting to see the importance of this panomic view of what artificial intelligence can do when it's unleashed in a comprehensive multifactorial data set. So you see companies or nation states like the US with NIH, with the All of Us program. You see it with NHS. You see it with several Asian countries developing these precision medicine models that they're trying to leverage data and leverage machine learning. But there are some worries. Well, now if you have all this data, all this ever-encompassing panomic view of you, what if it's wrong? And what other things can you start learning about other than disease or wellness? Well, we've seen that Google can be incorrect, trying to anticipate the influenza outbreak that was going to be based on CDC data. So we know that erroneous data sets could be out there. So that is one of the big things that we need other MDs and other smart PhDs to be involved in this kind of thing. These are some of the ethical things that we're dealing with. How do you train the data? How do you make sure that the errors aren't made? And this worries people. This is a study at Stanford. If people don't want to share their data, if they think that it's going to have incorrect outcomes that come out, or whether that data could be pilfered or used for other things. So this is something that concerns real people. The other aspect, so that's from the patient perspective. Now from the clinician perspective, people start worrying about, well, what if this algorithm start being 100% correct? This is one from Zebra with mammograms. What do you do at that point once those algorithms are so right that you don't need physicians anymore? You don't need the humans anymore. So those are some of the ethical things that are coming out with. So trying to deal and sit down with clinicians saying the benefits of this technology are so amazing and so astounding that they far outweigh the cons of them developing. But they won't only be things that cause us to have an abundance life here on Earth when it comes to wellness and health. They'll actually be what transitions us to an exospecies, to becoming a multiplanetary species. This is one which maybe some of you guys know about, the CHIP program. It's a healthcare initiative program which is actually crowdsourcing healthcare through AI, looking at different omics, trying to evaluate. They have a partnership with NASA, and they have a partnership with some other pediatric societies. So looking at what kind of problems, healthcare specifically, can be solved by leveraging artificial intelligence. TRISH, which is the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, a collaboration at Baylor, also with NASA, looking to do the same kind of things. They're looking to evaluate the effects of genomics and how AI can influence genomics and prevent microgravity effects and prevent cosmic radiation damage, as well as looking how to miniaturize, using AI, how to miniaturize some of our diagnostic studies, primarily around brain health, so miniaturizing CT scans and MRIs and things of that nature. Dr. Don Koenig spoke on the 3 R's that are some of the things that they're trying to focus, which is readiness, resiliency, and recovery. Readiness is really about trying to prepare our genomics. So who is best based on nutritional status, based on genomics, based on your microbiome? Who are the key candidates that will help us move into becoming an exospecies, that will help us be able to reach and colonize deep space and other planets? So there's a lot of data, a lot of machine learning applications that are here on Earth that can already be amalgamated and move into that. Things like 23andMe, Wellio, and others that are already looking at using and leveraging AI for obviously genomics, one that we're really familiar with, and nutritional states. At NASA iTech, it was based out of NASA Langley and the NIA, which is in Hampton Roads, which I live on the other side of the country. And the concept behind iTech was to develop an accelerator and an incubator that was specifically targeted for problems that we have for reaching and colonizing deep space. So we get together with all the CTOs of all the research centers, and we identify what are the major problems that we have from different perspectives. Mine is obviously healthcare, and how do we leverage technologies, and how do we bring startups to solve those solutions? So resiliency is a lot of what we do at iTech, developing anything from biomolecular sequencers to evaluate the microbiome not just within, but without, inside the capsules. The one on the right is a STAR robot, which is based out of the University of Chicago, and it's actually a robotic surgical unit. So it's an automated pod. We're already using it in animal trials, and it can do basic things like automated cholecystectomies, automated appendectomies, and even jejunostomy, so combining different parts of the bowel and closures. So these are the first steps, and machine learning is training all this. Artificial intelligence is training these programs, but it's the very first step to the automated pods. I'm sure you guys have seen Aliens. So artificial intelligence will be the key for these automated pods of the surgical future, and we're already creating this. And it will be twofold. One, we need it for the surgeries that we automatically know that we'll need, whether with pregnancy, if we're going to be colonizing other places, appendectomies, cholecystectomies, but the artificial intelligence will also have to decipher foreign pathogens. Hopefully they're not ripping out of our chest, but we still need to realize what's the possibility, and we needed to research and predict what can happen. Other components that we're doing at iTech, working with machine learning and a company called Liberty, which I work for, and we're creating algorithms to create new molecules to mitigate radiation effects. And it actually came out of an anti-aging medication, which is in human trials already. So mitigate the aging effects, also mitigates the radiation effects. Another company called ArcBio is leveraging machine learning and traditional diagnostics to be able to curate any pathogen in the body within 48 hours. So with one blood draw, and this is the early things of, if you guys watched Star Trek, the tricorder, right? So using one-stop shop for everything. This is just pathogenesis, just viruses and bacteria, but it's the beginning. I know DARPA's also working on one that does things a little bit more technically, mechanically complex, like blood oxygen and blood pressure and things of that nature, but machine learning is training all those, so we're already starting to see those kind of things. Even things like the holodeck. These are things that are actively being researched. The machine learning is leveraging some of these things. NYU's trying to create one. There are companies that are creating augmented reality windows, Reflect out of Munich, that are already starting to become the very beginnings of this, the very beginnings of our deep space exploration, of being able to leverage machine learning to get us to leave this rock and to colonize not just our own galaxy, but galaxies beyond. Because at the end of the day, we have always been explorers. We have always sought out to do new things. Everyone here is an explorer in some respect. Maybe not physically, but maybe spiritually, maybe intellectually. And machine learning is the one that's going to push us to be able to do that. Recovery. So once we come back, the resiliency part, making sure we evaluate. Machine learning is going to help us with this kind of concept with wearables and implantables to be able to evaluate, make sure our genomics wasn't affected by microgravity or radiation effects. So I want to show you this video, and I'll finish up with this about who we are and where we could possibly go in the future.
For all its material advantages, the sedentary life has left us edgy, unfulfilled. Even after 400 generations in villages and cities, we haven't forgotten. The open road still softly calls, like a nearly forgotten song of childhood. We invest far-off places with a certain romance. The appeal, I suspect, has been meticulously crafted by natural selection as an essential element in our survival. Long summers, mild winters, rich harvests, plentiful game. None of them lasts forever. Your own life, or your band's, or even your species might be owed to a restless few drawn by a craving they can hardly articulate or understand, to undiscovered lands and new worlds. Herman Melville in Moby Dick spoke for wanderers in all epochs and meridians. He said, I am tormented with an everlasting itch for things remote. I love to sail forbidden seas. Maybe it's a little early. Maybe the time is not quite yet. But those are the worlds, promising untold opportunities, beckon. Silently, they orbit the sun, waiting.
An abundant future with artificial intelligence. Allow us to explore unencumbered the universe without us and the universe within us. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey.
So you mentioned end of life several times in your presentation. How is AI going to help us to die? And don't tell me living longer. That's not the answer.
Gotcha. AI, in a perfect world, AI will give us the option of how we choose to die. Right now, no one has that option, very few, right? And even when we do have it, it's usually not in the best of circumstances. AI will be able to give us back the power over death, whether we choose to die or whether and when we do choose to, how that happens, which right now is something that has escaped us forever.
Great talk. Sign me up. I wanted to ask you, what do you think, from an artificial intelligence point of view, are the most difficult things you're going to have to come up against in terms of what humans are good at? To me, what I try to do as a physician now is try to teach my residents about clinical judgment, how you put everything together and come up with a treatment plan, considering lots of things, or humor. What are the big challenges for AI to encounter in terms of getting closer to what we do?
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind first and foremost is compassion. That's something that you can't, at this point, teach a machine yet. We're still trying with Turing tests to teach machines how to think and interact and be empathetic like we are, but that's difficult. And even when you start training machines to just learn based on human-human interactions, you fall into situations with like Microsoft Twitter bot where it becomes misogynist and anti-Semitic in about a minute, because unfortunately that's how we tend to interact with each other, at least in a public space. And that's AI is our progeny, and it will be good and bad in that it reflects who we are. So it gives us an opportunity, just like any other child would give us the opportunity, to try to instill in that progeny the best of us with trying to eliminate the worst of us. That's the way I view it. But compassion would be the thing that's going to be the toughest to learn, because I feel like even we as humans struggle with showing compassion to each other.
Peter, you've got the microphone, and then we have a question from someone who's online.
Thanks for your talk. I really appreciate it when people have the courage to talk about the distant future. It's fascinating. I'm kind of wondering what my AI personal physician is going to say about the calzone and chocolate chip cookie that I just ate. But I'm really curious about human physiology in space. And do you think it would make sense to genetically modify humans to exist better in space? You've touched on that with, for example, radiation resistance. And what modifications might make sense?
Yeah, well, the two biggest ones that we struggle with is microgravity and cosmic radiation effects. So those are the type of modifications we'd have to explore, whether it's using exponential technology such as CRISPR or using molecules that we're trying to look at now. And if we can mitigate those, if you think about the fact that right now we spend a lot of time and energy trying to shield astronauts, and once we start colonizing, starting to shield civilization from radiation. Well, if you had a way to modify your DNA, whether it's through a molecule that we ingest, or whether it's through some sort of other DNA or mechanical alteration to ourselves, then those would be the biggest things, because then you wouldn't have to take all the shielding that you do right now, whether it's using water or whatever else, to protect us for those deep space missions. So it makes a big change, not just from a physical perspective that we can survive, but actually from a cost perspective for missions, because now you're just taking drugs up as opposed to all this other complex. So radiation mitigation, and then microgravity effects, because this is where we evolved. This is where we grew up. This is our planet. This is our rock. So we have to try to simulate that, or try to adjust ourselves so we can acclimate to future planets. But then also evaluating, that's one aspect, but the other one is trying to anticipate how we might evolve. So creating micro avatars through AI to see, all right, well, if humans in 1,000 years on Mars, how would they possibly look? And then picking the genomics here that have the highest propensity to survive there. So that's the other kind of application that's not necessarily adjusting us, but pre-preparing us for those natural adjustments that would occur.
Peter, I just sent you the Space Gene list. Check your Slack.
Okay, this question comes from Dr. Daniel Kraft, one of our faculty. He's asking, can he address the hype versus hope elements of AI, given that he is from IBM? Any commentary on the recent Wall Street Journal coverage, critical of IBM Watson Progressive? What are the challenges to actual implementation, adoption of AI in healthcare?
Gotcha. So to answer the first question directly about the Wall Street Journal article, I think that IBM as a whole has been typically an industry leader in a lot of things. AI, as we know it, and we talked briefly for a slide or two, the fact that machine learning or computational math has been with us for really over 100 years. But machine learning as we actually know it today, and the different applications we know it today, is still very new. Even though it's been taught in schools and PhDs have been learning, convolutional neural networks and adversarial networks, the actual implementation, the application of that is still very new to every industry. IBM, you could argue that IBM took the first foray into healthcare AI, and there wouldn't be as much going on in healthcare AI right now if it wasn't for a big leader stepping into the industry. It always helps when you have a big company step into an industry. But with being a leader, there also tends to be things that evolve over time, things that you learn over time. And IBM is not unlike any other company. They're learning and they're growing just like anyone else is doing. When it comes to the gaps that we have, or the hype versus the reality, is the fact that healthcare is complex. Healthcare is complex, and we're just starting to learn. I mean, if you go back 100 or 200 years ago, we were bleeding people for humors. We think that we've solved all of healthcare. We know. And now the mesentery was just re-diagnosed as an organ. This is something that we knew about forever, but was finally so now we discovered a new organ like a year ago. We knew about it, but we just didn't classify it as an organ. So there's still so much we don't know. And then you think of the other exponential things that are coming out, such as the microbiome, epigenetics, our environment. It's just really complex. And we talk about how there's this abundance of data. Yes, data's out there, but when you start digging into data at any academic institution, the best in the world here, you go to any Ivy League place, you start looking at their data, and there's a lot of erroneous data. There's a lot of dirty data, and a lot of siloed data. So you have, even within a particular institution, you have one data set that won't talk to the other data set. And that's a systemic problem. And those things, just like anything or any other industry, those are growing pains, and those will be solved either in this country or in another country. But that's the thing, the mitigation, or that's the rate limiting step between hype and reality right now.
Time for one more question, Brad?
Thank you. So, Jose, it was great, and I'm really fascinated by the future. I just want to come back a little bit to the present.
Sure.
And understanding that there's huge cost reduction on preventive healthcare. I've seen a lot of what and why. I haven't seen a lot of how. And I don't want to create a debate on this. I just want to know what your opinion is.
Sure.
But considering, and basically more on underdeveloped countries and developing countries like mine,
Yeah.
Panama, healthcare is 100% on the hands of governments.
Right.
And the cost of implementation of everything that's being generated right now, it's really high.
Yeah.
Even though we consider that being preventive will save a lot of money. And then politicians, they just look for re-election every 5 years, if there is re-election. So trying to invest or to put a bet on something that will generate income more than 5 years from now is basically impossible. So who's working on that soft side that scientists are working on the what and the why? Who's working on the how? How is this really going to be democratizing healthcare, or is it just going to be for that 1% of the population?
There is the fear if it could be for that 1%, right? And that's why there's someone that complained one time online about why smart doctors are, go and work for industry or go work in entrepreneurial effects. And my counter argument to that is I think you need not less doctors, you need more doctors. We talked about the compassion effect. If you don't have people involved in creating these things that understand the mistakes that have been made in the past, I mean, you think of what some of the Nazis did, or you think of Tuskegee, you think of all these horrific events in the past, that medicine and science was at the core of those things. You have to have people there that remember those things. You have to have people there that realize those things to make sure that we're guiding in the correct way. So you need more people that are compassionate and thoughtful, like you're talking about. Politicians, like you said, it's a little more complex. I mean, it's not a political debate up here. We're talking science, but yes, they have other things that they're interested in, and that's just the realities of the life that we live in. The actual implementation of the how, it's going to have to take some brave people. It's going to have to take brave people at a ground level to make hard decisions, because preventative medicine, we know, pays off. There's already a lot of data, a lot of science. We know preventative medicine is the future and it's the way to go. In developing countries, one of the biggest problems is the fact that there's not as robust data sets out there. There aren't cancer registries. There's not a lot of things to go back on to train. And then you fall into the problem of a lot of the data that's already out there in healthcare comes from European, white, high socioeconomic status kind of data. And then this is a smorgasbord of civilization here, right? Why I'm Hispanic. So that data set does not necessarily apply to me. Won't apply to my son, who's half Hispanic and half European. So you have to have people that are willing to invest in these things, and it's really going to have to take the core, the individual. It's going to have to take thoughtful, compassionate people that understand all the problems that have occurred in the past, all the problems that could occur in the future, and make some unfortunate, difficult money decisions that it will pay off dividends in 10, 20 years. The argument I would say was it's the same thing with vaccinations or other type of preventative healthcare measures. These are the kind of things that you have to do for a society to sustain itself long term.